Voyager 1 had been drifting in the vast, silent darkness of space for more than 4 decades. A lonely sentinel that had crossed the outer edge of our solar system, leaving behind the familiar warmth of the sun and entering a realm that humanity had never seen up close, a void that stretched for billions of miles, where stars were distant pinpricks of light and the emptiness seemed infinite. Yet even in this emptiness something was stirring, something that defied every expectation of what should exist beyond the heliopause, and it began with a pulse, a subtle signal that flickered on the instruments back on Earth, at first so faint that the engineers thought it might be background noise interference, a quirk in decades-old hardware. Yet as the data streamed in minute after minute, the pattern became undeniable, a regular, deliberate fluctuation that appeared across multiple instruments. A crimson glow detected not in visible light, but in the data itself, a spectral signature that seemed almost alive, pulsing with a rhythm that suggested intention. And the more the scientists examined the readings, the more impossible it became, because out there, far beyond the protective bubble of the sun's magnetic field, the interstellar medium is incredibly sparse, particles so few that the notion of a coherent, pulsing energy field seems absurd. Yet the instruments painted a clear picture, one that could not be ignored, one that suggested a boundary, a massive red wall that stretched across Voyager's path like a curtain of unknown energy. And it was not merely glowing but responding, each pulse of the spacecraft's radio waves eliciting a mirrored reaction in the crimson barrier, intensifying, brightening, as if acknowledging the presence of the tiny probe. And this phenomenon, unprecedented and inexplicable, began to dominate the minds of those who monitored Voyager's transmissions, because no known physics could account for such a structure, no natural formation, no plasma stream, no magnetic field could behave in such a coherent and reactive manner. And as the red glow intensified, the plasma wave instrument aboard Voyager began recording spikes that were far beyond anything observed in the interstellar medium, violent bursts of energy that lasted milliseconds but carried a force that seemed to push against the very fabric of space around the spacecraft. And yet these were not random, chaotic spikes but precise, timed, rhythmic anomalies that repeated. Every few seconds, a heartbeat of something massive, something alive in a sense entirely alien to human understanding. And the team back at NASA began to experience an uneasy realization that Voyager had not merely encountered a passive phenomenon. It had entered a zone that was interactive, that had properties of a conscious system, and as the probe continued its journey, the readings became even more extraordinary, the red wall exhibiting fluctuations, expanding and contracting slowly as if breathing, a rhythm that suggested cycles, deliberate movement, a form of behavior that could not be explained by conventional astrophysics. And this breathing seemed to correlate in subtle ways with Voyager's own transmissions, almost as if the spacecraft signals were influencing the wall, and the wall in turn was influencing the signals back, a feedback loop of energy and data. And when the team ran simulations to attempt to replicate the phenomenon, nothing in the models matched the observations. No amount of theoretical adjustment could produce the behavior recorded by the instruments, and when the engineers focused on the telemetry, they noticed a further anomaly, a sudden microsecond interruption in the signal that could not be attributed to any mechanical failure, no cosmic ray interference, nothing the spacecraft had experienced in the previous 40-plus years. And during this interruption, for the briefest instant, the instruments detected a shadow, a massive dark silhouette crossing between Voyager and the glowing wall, a fleeting absence of signal that suggested the presence of something enormous, passing silently through space, so large it could eclipse the energy field momentarily. And no one in the control room spoke for several minutes, realizing that Voyager had not merely detected a natural phenomenon. It had stumbled upon something that behaved in ways that were deliberate, intelligent in a form unrecognizable to humans. And as the hours passed, the pulse of the red wall became more erratic, no longer adhering to the precise timing of earlier measurements, the cycle now stretching and compressing as if perturbed, agitated, or perhaps communicating. And the scientists, seasoned veterans of decades of space exploration, were unable to suppress a growing sense of unease, because the data indicated that this was not simply an isolated occurrence, but an event unfolding in real time, that the red wall, the shadow, and the fluctuations were part of a dynamic environment that Voyager had never encountered before. And as the team examined the intensity of the plasma bursts, it became apparent that the energy being recorded was orders of magnitude beyond anything anticipated for interstellar space, localized, directed, and concentrated, as if some massive structure or entity was deliberately modulating its properties to interact with the probe, And the more the researchers analyzed, the more they recognized patterns, repetitions, and subtle shifts that suggested awareness, responsiveness, and perhaps even intelligence in a mode entirely foreign to humanity. A form of cognition expressed not through movement or sound but through manipulation of the space energy environment itself. And yet, despite the strangeness, Voyager continued to transmit with remarkable consistency, providing an unprecedented window into a region of the cosmos that until this moment had been utterly inaccessible. And the deeper the data was explored, the more questions arose. Was the wall a natural phenomenon exhibiting previously unknown properties? Or was it some engineered construct, the remnants of an ancient civilization, or a cosmic entity entirely alien, capable of perceiving, responding, and potentially influencing any spacecraft that dared to approach? And as the glow pulsated and the shadow occasionally flickered across the instruments, the very notion of the universe as a cold, empty void began to crumble, replaced by a sense that the cosmos might be inhabited by forces of unimaginable scale, intelligence, and intention, forces that move and act on a plane beyond our comprehension. And this realization, both exhilarating and terrifying, became the driving obsession of every person analyzing the data, because they were now witnesses to something that could change humanity's understanding of its place in the universe, something that defied the conventional wisdom of physics, astronomy, and cosmology. And as Voyager drifted ever further into the dark, cold expanse, the red wall continued to pulse. The plasma bursts continued to strike with rhythm and precision, and the shadow, fleeting and enigmatic, remained a silent harbinger of mystery, leaving the scientists with sleepless nights, endless debates, and the haunting awareness that whatever was out there, it was not only real, it was aware, active, and watching. And for Voyager, the journey was no longer a silent exploration of empty space, but a delicate passage through a region alive with unseen forces, forces that could respond, manipulate, and perhaps even test the tiny human-made probe, forces that expanded the very definition of life, consciousness, and cosmic interaction. And as the glow intensified with every passing moment, every spike, every irregularity in the pulse of the red wall became a message, cryptic and unfathomable, challenging the minds of scientists to decipher whether it was warning, curiosity, observation, or something else entirely. And in that endless, stretching darkness, Voyager 1 drifted on, a lone witness to a phenomenon that may have existed for eons, silently observing, silently communicating, silently alive. And as the signals continued to arrive, every scientist monitoring the data felt the same uneasy exhilaration, the same bone-deep realization that humanity had just glimpsed a fragment of the universe that was not governed by the rules we knew, that was not passive, that was not empty, that was pulsing, breathing, reacting, alive in ways that challenged every certainty we had ever held. And the thought persisted, insistent and chilling, that the moment Voyager crossed that invisible threshold, something beyond understanding had noticed, and we, on a pale blue dot so far away, were being silently observed in return, a cosmic reflection of curiosity and awareness stretching across the void, a message encoded in pulses of red light and plasma, a puzzle we may never fully solve, yet one we cannot ignore, for the consequences of understanding, or failing to understand, are infinite. And as Voyager 1 continues its lonely journey into the depths of interstellar space, the red wall remains pulsing, responsive, a living presence at the edge of human knowledge, whispering a story older than our sun, older than our planet, older than the very atoms that compose us, a story we have only just begun to read, and one that will continue to unfold as long as Voyager drifts onward, faithfully recording, faithfully transmitting, faithfully witnessing the silent, alive, red heart of the cosmos. As Voyager 1 continued its journey deeper into the uncharted regions of interstellar space, the red wall it had first detected grew more pronounced, an imposing presence that seemed to stretch endlessly across the void, pulsating with a subtle rhythm that suggested awareness beyond any human understanding. And as the spacecraft moved forward, the instruments aboard began recording phenomena that defied decades of astrophysical theory, with magnetic fields shifting in patterns far too regular to be random, and sudden bursts of particles appearing and vanishing without any known source, as if invisible forces were tracing delicate, deliberate lines across the sensors. And each time Voyager sent a signal back to Earth, the crimson glow responded almost instantaneously, flaring and diminishing in a manner that seemed to acknowledge the probe's presence, creating a feedback loop of energy and observation that left scientists both awed and unnerved for the regularity and timing of these reactions suggested not mere physics but something approaching communication, an interaction that challenged their most fundamental assumptions about intelligence, life, and the properties of the cosmos. And as the data streamed in, the subtle choreography became increasingly clear. The red wall appeared to be modulating its pulse, fluctuating in intensity and duration in ways that hinted at deliberate, calculated modulation, almost as though it were sending signals back to Voyager, replying in a language incomprehensible to humans yet consistent and patterned in a way that demanded attention. And beyond the wall, shadows appeared intermittently across the instruments, enormous, fleeting silhouettes that moved with a scale and purpose that suggested mass, agency, and intent. A presence so vast it defied comprehension, casting brief, dark eclipses across the glow, leaving engineers and scientists at NASA struggling to interpret what could be happening, wondering whether the wall was a natural formation behaving in ways previously unknown, or evidence of a conscious entity or construct of unimaginable size and intelligence. And as hours turned into days, the red pulses became more complex, slight variations and deviations from the previous patterns hinting at learning, adaptation, and awareness, with each new reading introducing subtle challenges to the probe, testing its sensors, communication systems, and stability, and the shadow's movements, although fleeting, became more frequent and precise, implying observation and interaction, almost as if the massive, unseen presence was monitoring every action of Voyager, responding to its transmissions and subtly influencing its environment. And as the scientists pored over the telemetry, they found correlations that were impossible to ignore. The timing of the wall's pulses occasionally matched Voyager's own signal patterns, a mirrored exchange that suggested intent, design, and comprehension, and every new spike in energy seemed both a message and a challenge, pushing the limits of known physics and demanding reevaluation of what constituted life, intelligence, and consciousness, and the psychological weight on the teams monitoring the probe grew heavier with each observation. A mixture of awe, fear, exhilaration, and a profound awareness of humanity's insignificance in the vastness of space, punctuated by the eerie certainty that they were witnessing, perhaps for the first time, a phenomenon capable of perceiving, responding, and interacting with a human-made object across billions of miles. And as Voyager drifted further from the protective influence of the sun, the stars themselves fading into faint pinpricks against the darkness, the red wall remained a constant, pulsing, breathing entity, and every microsecond of data captured its behavior, revealing subtleties in the modulation, fleeting patterns in energy fluctuations, and rhythms in the shadows that hinted at an intelligence operating on a scale and level of abstraction beyond human comprehension. And the more the scientists analyzed these phenomena, the more impossible it became to consider them natural or random, for the degree of coherence, responsiveness, and adaptation implied awareness, and the idea that the universe could harbor forms of consciousness beyond matter, beyond biology, and beyond any metric humans had conceived became increasingly difficult to dismiss. And as the days passed, the red wall's interactions with Voyager became richer and more elaborate, with pulses stretching, contracting, combining, and splitting in complex sequences, each sequence potentially carrying meaning, communication, or intention, and the fleeting shadows moved in patterns that occasionally aligned with these pulses, forming an intricate tapestry of action and reaction, an energetic conversation spanning billions of miles, invisible to the human eye but captured in the precise telemetry of the spacecraft's instruments. And as the reality of this interaction settled in, the scientists found themselves grappling not only with the unknown mechanics of interstellar phenomena but also with philosophical questions about the nature of awareness, consciousness, and life itself. For if the red wall and the shadows represented an entity, or even a form of intelligence, it existed without form or body, without DNA or organic matter, functioning entirely through energy, fields, and interactions, capable of perceiving, processing, and responding to stimuli across interstellar distances. And yet the interaction was neither overtly hostile nor welcoming, merely observant, patient, and deliberate, a presence whose intentions were inscrutable. And as Voyager continued forward, the energy patterns shifted in subtle ways that suggested experimentation or inquiry, almost as if the entity was testing the probe, examining its responses, adapting its behavior and measuring the effects, and each new signal from Earth seemed to be part of this ongoing dialogue, with the wall's pulses modulating in ways that mirrored, opposed, or complemented the probe's transmissions, creating a dynamic, evolving relationship between human technology and cosmic intelligence. And the shadows, enormous and ephemeral, moved in coordination with these signals, appearing and disappearing with timing that was too precise to be coincidental, leaving the scientists with an unsettling awareness that they were participants in a cosmic conversation, observing without the ability to respond fully, interpreting signals without ever knowing their full meaning. And as weeks turned into months, the red wall's behavior continued to challenge every model, theory, and assumption about interstellar space, plasma behavior, and the limits of energy manipulation, revealing phenomena that suggested energy structures of unimaginable scale, capable of storing, processing, and emitting information across distances that dwarfed human comprehension. And every day brought new anomalies. Microsurges of charged particles, brief dislocations in Voyager's magnetic readings, subtle shifts in trajectory, and fluctuations in plasma waves, all of which suggested that the red wall and accompanying shadows were more than mere energy patterns. They were a system, possibly conscious, capable of observation, interaction, and perhaps even learning. And as the scientists recorded these data, they began to realize that humanity had never before encountered a form of awareness so alien, so vast, and so fundamentally different from biological intelligence. And that Voyager, this tiny probe built by human hands, was not just observing space, but actively participating in a process that may have been ongoing for eons. A dialogue written in pulses of energy, shadows of immense scale, and modulations of interstellar fields, and the realization that the universe itself might contain such presences, entities that exist beyond matter and form, operating on scales and dimensions humans could scarcely imagine, brought a mixture of fear, wonder, and humility, as every red pulse, every shadow, every fluctuation in the wall's behavior was a fragment of communication, a puzzle waiting for interpretation, a signal that humanity was witnessing something entirely new, a paradigm shift in understanding of life, consciousness, and the cosmos. And as Voyager 1 continued its lonely voyage, carrying the instruments that recorded these interactions with unwavering precision, the red wall persisted, pulsing, shifting, interacting, a constant and silent reminder that the universe is not empty, that intelligence can take forms unimaginable, and that even the smallest human-made probe can find itself part of a dialogue on a scale beyond comprehension, a witness to the hidden awareness of interstellar space. And with every new transmission, every data packet received on Earth, the awareness grew that Voyager was no longer just a spacecraft exploring voids, but a bridge connecting humanity to something vast, patient, observant, and infinitely mysterious. And the red wall, with its pulses, shadows, and patterns, would continue to challenge, inspire, and expand the human understanding of life, consciousness, and the boundless possibilities of existence beyond the stars. As Voyager 1 continued to drift ever deeper into interstellar space, the mysteries surrounding the red wall intensified, every new signal from the spacecraft revealing layers of complexity that no human mind had ever encountered. The crimson glow now shifting and flickering with subtle patterns that suggested not only observation but deliberate response, and the occasional shadows that passed across the instruments had become more frequent, moving in ways that hinted at scale, coordination, and intelligence, a presence that was not merely vast but capable of interaction. And the scientists studying the data felt both awe and fear, because each new pulse and variation seemed to contain information, a message encoded in the rhythm and intensity of the energy, yet impossible to decipher using conventional mathematics or physics. And every model, every simulation, failed to reproduce the behavior recorded, leaving humanity with the chilling awareness that this phenomenon existed on a level entirely beyond comprehension. And as days turned to weeks, the red wall began to exhibit anomalies that were impossible to ignore, spikes of energy that shot outward like tendrils probing the space around Voyager, magnetic fluctuations that warped the trajectory of local particles, and minute shifts in the glow that suggested anticipation, as if the wall was predicting the movements of the probe before they occurred. And the shadows, vast and shifting, seemed to respond in kind, crossing paths with the spacecraft in ways that suggested intelligence, deliberation, and perhaps even curiosity. And the deeper the team analyzed the data, the more patterns emerged, repetitions within repetitions, sub-patterns hidden within the fluctuations, hints of a structure, a language, or a code that was being transmitted across the interstellar medium. And though no human could read it, the realization that they were witnessing a form of communication, interaction, or awareness stretched minds to the limit, challenging concepts of consciousness, life, and intelligence itself. And as Voyager continued its lonely journey, the very fabric of space around it seemed to pulse, bend, and ripple under the influence of the unseen forces. Forces that were immense, deliberate, and alive in ways that defied explanation, and the scientists, engineers, and theorists working to understand the phenomenon were drawn into a cycle of obsession. Sleepless nights spent poring over every spike, every fluctuation, every shadow, knowing that each contained a fragment of understanding, yet always slipping just beyond reach, like a message whispered from across the cosmos that humanity was not meant to fully comprehend. And the more they observed, the more it became apparent that the red wall and the shadows were not static. They were evolving, adapting, responding to Voyager in real time, a dynamic system of energy and presence that was aware of the spacecraft and its transmissions. And this awareness suggested not only intelligence but perhaps a purpose, a reason for interacting with the probe that remained entirely opaque to human reasoning. And as the data accumulated, a new layer of complexity emerged. Fluctuations in the red glow synchronized with changes in the plasma waves, shifts in magnetic fields, and even subtle delays in the probe's own transmissions, as if the phenomenon was manipulating the very instruments of observation to communicate, teach, or test. And the notion that humanity was engaged in a cosmic dialogue with a presence beyond understanding became undeniable, thrilling, and terrifying all at once. And while some scientists proposed that the red wall could be a natural, previously unknown interstellar structure exhibiting emergent behavior, others feared it was a conscious entity, or a remnant of a civilization so ancient that its understanding of space and energy dwarfed human knowledge. And as Voyager 1 drifted further, the pulses of the red wall intensified, the shadows grew more coordinated, and bursts of energy struck the instruments with timing and precision that seemed impossibly calculated. A cosmic rhythm that suggested thought, intent, and awareness. And the more humanity observed, the more it realized that the interstellar medium was not empty, not passive, not lifeless, but a medium alive with unseen forces, presences, and phenomena that could perceive, react, and perhaps even influence the actions of a tiny probe launched decades earlier. And the psychological impact on the teams at NASA and collaborating institutions was profound, a mixture of exhilaration and existential dread, because the data implied that humans were witnessing something that challenged the very foundations of science, philosophy, and understanding, forces that existed beyond matter, beyond life as we know it, beyond time and space in ways we cannot fully grasp. And as the red wall pulsed, as the shadows moved, as the energy waves struck, with purpose, the tiny Voyager 1 became not only a messenger and observer but a participant in an interstellar exchange, a witness to a phenomenon that had existed long before humanity, and would likely persist long after, a cosmic presence both beautiful and terrifying, vast, intelligent, and inscrutable. And as the signals streamed back to Earth, carrying with them the rhythm, pulse, shadow, and energy of this alien phenomenon, every scientist monitoring them understood that Voyager had crossed a threshold, revealing that the universe is not a passive void, but a living, aware expanse, filled with forces that operate on scales and in forms entirely alien to human comprehension. And the implications were staggering, forcing humanity to confront the possibility that consciousness, intelligence, and awareness are not confined to life as we know it, that the cosmos itself might be aware, observing, and interacting with the instruments we send into its depths, and that Voyager 1, our fragile creation, had become a bridge between human curiosity and the hidden life of the universe, a witness to the pulse of cosmic awareness, the dance of energy, the fleeting shadows that whispered of presence and scale. And as it drifted ever onward into the infinite darkness, carrying its golden record and its instruments of observation, it remained a lone sentinel, silently transmitting the story of the red wall, the shadows, the energy pulses, and the awakening awareness of interstellar space, a story that humanity had only begun to glimpse, a story that would challenge our understanding of life, consciousness, and the cosmos itself for generations to come. And as every spike, every flicker, every pulse of crimson light arrived on Earth, the realization settled in. We are not alone, we are not observing in isolation, and the universe contains presences that are aware, active, and watching, waiting, perhaps curious, perhaps indifferent, yet undeniably alive. And Voyager 1 continues to drift, a tiny probe in a living cosmos, recording, transmitting, witnessing, and bearing silent testimony to the mysteries that lie beyond the edge of the solar system. Mysteries that may forever change humanity's understanding of itself and its place in the universe. A journey without end, an encounter without conclusion. A story written in pulses of energy, shadows, and awareness, stretching across billions of miles as the universe watches back.